guys, and welcome back to another episode of Next to Madison. On today's episode, we are talking about gut health. We are hearing about it constantly. The probiotic, prebiotic industry is billions and billions of dollars and growing because we are learning more about how important gut health really is. But a lot of us get stuck because we don't know exactly what that means or how to properly take care of our gut, which leads to taking care of ourselves. So on today's episode, I'm sitting down with an expert who's going to kind of dive into this and answer all our questions about what we can do to have the healthiest gut possible. So with that being said, I want to bring on my guest, Carley Smith, who is the founder of Fairy Gutmother. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So tell us about your journey, because this wasn't just an accident. Something happened to you that kind of led you to this point.
Absolutely. So in 2014, I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, actually, which for those that don't know, Lyme disease is basically just a tick bite. And sometimes you notice that you got it and sometimes you don't. I started having flu-like symptoms, and it really settled in my hormones for me, which is a little bit different than what most people experience with Lyme disease. But I was menstrual bleeding for like 4 months straight, and the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong. And I just kept jumping around from doctor to doctor, trying to figure out, what's going on, and went on different medications, and eventually found out I had Lyme disease. And so I went the whole, antibiotics route, which is the most common treatment for Lyme disease. And after a few months on antibiotics, I just felt like I was taking medications for my medications and that they were wreaking more havoc on my body than doing good. So I stopped all of my medications and just started doing my own research. And that's when I started learning about gut health, and that nearly the entire immune system is located in the gut. So I began implementing a gut healing protocol, and honestly, just within a few weeks, I started noticing some improvements in my health. So my cognitive function came back, my cognitive clarity, and I just, became so empowered with the progress in my health just on such a short period of time that I knew that this information had to get out to more people. So I went back to school, studied nutrition, and then started Fairy Gutmother so that I could help other people.
I mean, that's amazing. So how long did this take now is the Lyme disease gone?
So Lyme stays in your body basically forever.
Okay.
But my thoughts are that if we can strengthen our immune system, we can suppress the disease and so that it's dormant. And that's basically, what I feel like I have done is by strengthening my immune system and really working on gut health, I've been able to suppress the disease. There was a time in my life after, a couple of years, my mom passed away and I went through, all of this trauma and stress that I noticed Lyme flared up again. And I did the whole, self-care and went back to gut health and the foundations. And I was able to, to repair myself and restore my health and get better. So it technically is kind of always in your body, but really if you just build up that immune system, you are able to live with it in harmony and suppress it. And I feel better now than I felt before I even had Lyme disease.
Wow. And so because when people hear building up your immune system, I think first thing they think is like, oh, I'll just take high doses of vitamin C.
Yes.
And maybe zinc in there. But that's
Right.
not really, from what I'm hearing, it's not really addressing the issue.
So that's part of it, absolutely. But the way you break down gut health is essentially it's this healthy balance of bacteria and fungi that are in your gut, or essentially your microbiome, and then combine that with a nice healed and sealed gut lining. So I use this analogy that the gut lining is like a garden hose. You want this nice healed and sealed lining. If you have holes in the garden hose, you get water splurting out everywhere. That's exactly what's going on in the gut. So you want this nice healed and sealed lining so your undigested foods and toxins can kind of safely remove from the body, and then that nice balance of bacteria and fungi in the gut, which really is in essence your immune system.
Interesting. So how does one go about healing their gut?
So a few different ways. I mean, definitely number one is through diet. So making sure that you are incorporating foods that help promote that healthy balance of bacteria and fungi. So number one would be incorporating more fiber into your diet. Fiber helps feed the beneficial organisms in the gut. It's basically food for the beneficial bacteria. So you mentioned before prebiotics. So there's probiotics, which are the bacteria and fungi that are in the gut, the organisms, and prebiotics is essentially just fiber. It's food for the bacteria. So most of our diets are severely lacking in fiber. And if those organisms don't get the food that they need to eat to live on, they either die or they end up eating away at the gut lining, which is one of the contributors towards leaky gut. So you really want to make sure you're feeding them the right food. And if you're eating foods that feed the pathogens in the gut, those are foods like processed foods and sugar, then you're going to get an overgrowth of the bad organisms in the gut, which can become problematic. And this is where a lot of diseases come into play. This is essentially called dysbiosis, is when you have that overgrowth of pathogens in the gut. So with dysbiosis, this can lead to lots of health complications, again, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, autoimmune conditions, but they also can create what's called biofilms, or basically digestive plaque. And that's when the pathogens team up together and they create this wall. So think of it as like the plaque on your teeth, essentially. And it makes it very hard for those beneficial organisms to thrive because they're really, masked under this film, essentially. So you really want to get in there and disrupt those biofilms. Foods like apple cider vinegar, turmeric, ginger, garlic, those can also help to disrupt the biofilms. And then that way you can really get that healthy balance of bacteria and fungi.
Okay, so what are some other foods that people can put into their diet that are high in fiber that we might not know?
Sure. So definitely like greens, any fruits and vegetables, high fiber rich foods. Resistant starches are really great. Resistant starches are foods like potatoes, oats, underripe bananas, legumes. Those are resistant to digestion, and basically they break down in the large intestine by being fermented or essentially consumed by the beneficial bacteria. So any sorts of greens, fruits, resistant starches, those are all really good sources of fiber and food for the beneficial bacteria.
Okay, so what is a normal, what do you start your day with, breakfast-wise?
It really just depends. That's the cool thing about gut health, is that there's such a wide range of foods that are helpful in maintaining that optimal health. And so it's really customizable, and you can choose kind of what works best for you, what schedules work best for you, as long as you're making sure that you're hitting those marks of the majority part of your diet is fiber, then you're incorporating some healthy fats and some healthy proteins. And the one other thing I like to encourage people to consume is fermented foods. So those are like sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, which is basically just a fermented Chinese tea, because those are full of those living organisms. It's basically a food as medicine approach to a probiotic supplement. So you're getting that, repopulating that gut with beneficial bacteria, plus ferments also really help to digest your food. So oftentimes if you incorporate a little bit of fermented foods in with your meal, you'll notice that you might digest it a little bit better as well.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because kimchi is one of those things where it's really great to eat out, but you don't want to cook it in your house. My neighbor in New York cooks it sometimes, and I don't know if he died.
It's definitely different. But, I found that if you incorporate some of the fermented foods into other recipes, it's so much easier to consume. So like I have a recipe for kimchi fried rice. So it's just, you're using a little bit of kimchi, but, kind of masking some of that potent flavor, especially if you are new to incorporating ferments. Cooking it in like something like that is a really great option. Or like I have these really awesome sauerkraut slaws that I absolutely love on like tacos and burgers. So you've got like some fresh chopped cabbage, you mix in a little bit of your kraut, some lime juice, a little bit of green apple, radish. So it's almost like a salsa in a way, and it's really delicious and a great way to start incorporating ferments in kind of a small amount, so you're not that smell and that taste isn't so overbearing.
No, that's a great idea. And so how often should somebody eat fermented foods? Like how often, like how many times per week?
So it's really, again, it just kind of depends on the situation and on the person. You just as like a general good housekeeping rule of thumb, I say to, if you're taking a probiotic supplement, maybe, one every 2 or 3 days or so, and kind of the same thing with ferments, just as long as like 2 to 3 times a week, incorporating into your diet as a general good housekeeping rule of thumb.
Okay, interesting. And so do you take probiotics daily?
I do, but I kind of go on and off of them. So I'll adjust it towards my schedule. So if I've been traveling, I will start incorporating probiotics back into my system. If I am really stressed, or if I've been off of my schedule, I'll start incorporating them back into my system. And then I'll do it, sort of like a good housekeeping one every 3 days or 2 days or something like that. So it's not all the time, but um, I just go off of as needed approach.
Okay, so would it be just as beneficial if you just ate like a spoonful of sauerkraut?
Absolutely, you can do that as well. So that's a really good food as medicine approach. And I'm always incorporating ferments into my diet if I'm not doing probiotics.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, I mean, especially like I never thought that, you kind of see them like sauerkraut was for hot dogs, but hot dogs weren't great for you. So
Right.
you wouldn't think to be kind of eating this stuff. But the fact is, like, I don't really have all the time to cook, and I'm not a big cooker. So if that's actually good to be able just to maybe 2 times a week, just eat a spoonful of or of kimchi. What's it called? Sauerkraut.
Kimchi. Yeah, kimchi and sauerkraut. Yeah, exactly. Or drinking a kombucha, a fermented Chinese tea. That's another really great way to kind of incorporate it. Miso is another fermented food. Even like aged cheeses and yogurt. Those are also great ways to kind of get some of those organisms in the gut. The one thing I just encourage people to look out for when shopping for yogurt is that sometimes brands will put a lot of sugar and other sorts of ingredients in there, so it's kind of defeating the purpose of gut health. So just make sure you read the food labels, so that you know exactly what you're getting. And a lot of times they'll put on the food labels which species of bacteria that you're getting, so making sure that it has like lactobacillus in there, which is one of the beneficial bacteria that you want to look for. So that can just be really helpful.
Do you have any brands off the top of your head that you like?
Yogurt.
Yeah.
I there's I really just honestly encourage you to use ones that are sourced humanely sourced. So from grass-fed animals, and just reading, on the labels what to look for, different, and trying to find ones that are more local to your area. That's can generally be a better option. I usually encourage people to make their own homemade yogurt, which I know sounds like a lot of work, but it's really simple to make. You can get a starter packet, and basically a starter. So it's kind of just like something to kind of get that bacteria growing. And you just use regular milk, whole milk, and basically put the starter packet in with the milk and let it sit for 8 to 10 hours. And then in a temperature controlled environment, and the next day you get yogurt. You can do the same thing with, instead of getting a starter packet, but you could just do like another little cup of yogurt, just something that has those organisms already in it to kind of get the other organisms to grow. And that's really simple. You know what you're putting in there. You're not getting any additives, sugars, and you can source the quality of dairy as well. So that's what I usually recommend. And honestly, homemade yogurt, what I found is easier to digest for those that have dairy complications, because it's allowed to kind of ferment or culture for a little bit longer period of time than what you find on store shelves. So that might be something fun to kind of experiment with, and try making your own at home sometime.
Yeah, I never even thought about that. I mean, that's very interesting. But you're also hearing like a lot of diets or programs that'll say like eliminate dairy. Like dairy wreaks havoc on your body. So what do you say to that?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of things that, in the overall picture that help to promote optimal gut health, like grains and dairy. And these are two things that were told a lot of the times to take out of our diet. So you have to take a couple steps back. And if you have a compromised gut, grains and dairy are definitely going to be a little bit harder to digest. One, because you don't necessarily have those beneficial organisms in the gut to digest some of those foods, which is why we don't feel well when we consume them. But if you generally work towards healing the gut and then slowly reintroducing those foods and introducing them in their properly prepared form, so getting a really good source of dairy versus like a Yoplait yogurt, for instance, and sourcing really good quality grains that are GMO free, organic, and properly prepared. Sometimes it really helps to soak them before you prepare them. Then you can generally digest them a little bit better. Now, sometimes people just don't do well with them at all. And in that case, absolutely, don't do anything that doesn't make you feel well. But for the most part, a lot of the times we have problems digesting these foods, and these foods are causing problems because we can't properly digest them and we have a compromised gut. So we have to go back, fix the gut, and then slowly reintroduce those foods.
So how does one know if they have a compromised gut?
A few different ways. I mean, definitely number one, red flag, gut issues. If you eat and you have gas, bloating, or you're struggling with constipation, diarrhea, like those are all red flags for gut issues. Skin issues can definitely be a red flag for the gut. So acne, rosacea, eczema, autoimmune conditions, they're saying anywhere between 80 and 90% of diseases now are traced back to the gut. So if you have underlying health complications, yeah, it's crazy. If you have any underlying health complications, I always just recommend starting with the gut. The gut truly is the foundation for our health. And it's not necessarily the cure-all, but it is certainly the foundation. So underlying health complications, I always just recommend coming back to the gut, making sure that you're properly digesting your foods, you have that optimum balance of bacteria and fungi, and you have that nice healed and sealed gut lining.
Well, okay, so if somebody is listening to this and they say, I definitely have a compromised gut because I'm bloated and I have gas pains, the first thing they should do is maybe start on a probiotic.
So there's, the gut is like a thumbprint. I tell people it's very unique to you. So how you go about healing your gut, it would be totally different than the next person. Now there's some, bigger picture items that kind of everyone should work towards, but how you really implement that for your body is going to be unique to you. So a general recommendation is using some sort of digestive enzyme, something that's going to help you to start breaking down your foods properly. Most of us have too little stomach acid and an imbalance of stomach pH as compared to too much stomach acid. So supplementing with a digestive enzyme. You can also take digestive bitters, which is just, something that you just put on your tongue, a couple drops before your meal to help stimulate your digestive enzymes. And then that way you're making sure you're breaking down your food properly. And then in addition to that, really cleaning up the diet. If you have troubles digesting food, so again, if you are bloated and discomfort after meals, I recommend a much easier to digest diet for a while until you can kind of start incorporating more raw foods into your diet. So like blended soups, for instance, I call them being pre-digested. They're cooked and they're blended, and that way it gives the gut a little bit of a break, and that should really help with some of the bloating and discomfort after eating. And I always recommend bone broth. I am a huge fan of bone broth. Bone broth is basically, if you were to put a whole chicken carcass in a slow cooker, put some veggies and fixins in there, water, and let it sit for 24 hours, that basically is your broth. And that's really, really nourishing to the body. So basically you're extracting all the nutrients from the bones, like cartilage, collagen, the connective tissue, all of those nutrients that are going to be really helpful in repairing the gut lining. So, incorporating, easier to digest foods, maybe a probiotic, an enzyme, and then foods that kind of will be very nourishing to the gut is a really strong foundation to start for gut health, as well as eliminating the foods that are going to wreak havoc on the gut, which are your processed foods and sugars.
Interesting. So a digestive enzyme, if you go to like a Whole Foods or a vitamin shop,
Yes.
it'll say digestive enzyme on it. You can.
Yes, yes. So there are a few to choose from. There's, ones that have hydrochloric acid and pepsin, which are just two naturally occurring digestive enzymes in the stomach. That is a great option. If you have hiatal hernias or, troubles with the esophagus lining, I would kind of steer away from those and go to like more of a natural approach. But those are extremely effective. You can also get enzymes with bromelain, which is basically just sourced from pineapple. Papaya is another source for a digestive enzyme. So there are lots of different kinds of enzymes to choose from. It'd just be about choosing which one works best for you in whatever circumstance you're in.
Interesting. Okay. And also when you go or when you're at the store and you look at probiotics, they have like so many billions, what is it, IUs or something? How
Yes.
do you know which one to take?
Right. So I just recommend the smaller amount, the better. So you don't want to bombard the gut with too many organisms. So we want that beneficial bacteria, but too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. So you want it very concise. I recommend just, 3 or 4 strains of beneficial bacteria that are in the gut, like a lactobacillus. These are your anti-inflammatory organisms that are in the gut. And those are the ones that are really working to strengthen the immune system. And a lower amount of the probiotics is kind of what you want to look for. So like 30 billion is a good place to start, because sometimes if you're doing too much, that's not always a good thing. And especially if you take so I'll see this all the time. People will take a probiotic and then they've got their sauerkraut and then they've got their kombucha, and it's just like going crazy. So that can have an adverse effect on the gut. So you want to do slowly, start out small, a little bit of ferments or a probiotic, and then kind of just let the organisms slowly start to adapt in the gut.
So on a day, because I know a lot of people that take probiotics every single day. So they'll
And
take
that's
a probiotic. So can they take a daily probiotic,
absolutely,
once a week sauerkraut?
absolutely, yes.
And that would help. Okay. And then do you ever bump, if it's a good starter to start with 30 billion, but do you ever bump up? Like when can you bump up? Because I know people that take like 50 billion.
Right. And again, it goes back to it being your thumbprint. Your gut is so unique to you. So if you do well with that and you're okay, then certainly by all means, you can just, continue along that path. I just say, if you're just kind of starting out, introduce slowly so you don't have any adverse reactions. 30 billion is usually a kind of a safe place. And then for my clients, I kind of say, all right, let's just do this one every couple days. All right, now we can do, one every day. And then if you are traveling or if your immune system is suppressed, then sometimes you can bump that up and maybe do 2 probiotics a day if you really need it. Or maybe you've just taken a round of antibiotics, then you kind of want to clean things up. Then you might think about increasing the dosage. But if I get a supplement with a really low dose, it's easier for me to manipulate the dosage every day, or kind of play around with it as needed.
Right. So how does one know when it's working?
So if you have any red flags in the gut, if you have digestive complications, if you have health conditions, definitely you'll notice those symptoms start to subside. I usually tell people that the gut can change in 24 hours. The microbiome changes within 24 hours, which is remarkable, because that shows that how quickly our body can respond. But in order to really feel the effects, I tell people to give yourself at least a couple weeks on these new dietary changes. Allow the gut to adjust, because sometimes it can be a bit rocky, especially if you have been sick for a while. And I think that's one of the most common questions I'm asked is, how long is this going to take? And we all want a quick fix.
Right.
But it doesn't, while the gut changes within 24 hours, it does take a while to heal. So I tell people, think about how long it is that you've been sick and give yourself that amount of time to heal. Now, that's not saying that you won't feel better before then, but you do have to work with the gut for a while in order to really get that solid foundation.
Interesting. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier about antibiotics. So antibiotics strip the body of good and bad bacteria, right?
Correct.
Like it strips it of all bacteria. Is that why sometimes, sorry, I'm going to get gross here, but is that why sometimes when you take an antibiotic, you'll get a yeast infection?
Absolutely. So basically what that is, you're destroying the good and the bad bacteria, and then you're getting that overgrowth of pathogens. And generally with yeast infections, it's Candida, which is your pathogenic fungi yeast. And so, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying in the beginning with dysbiosis, that's your overgrowth of pathogens in the gut, which chronic or over a long periods of time can start to wreak havoc on the body. That's when your biofilms start to form and really the bad guys take over. So it is really important that if you do notice, if you do have these chronic issues, that there is something going on in the gut there, and you really want to make sure that you take care of that before it gets out of control.
Right. No, absolutely. So let's go back to the bone broth, because I'm starting to see this a lot in people advertising and
I
companies.
love it.
How often should somebody do that? Because I've also heard it's great for, because of the collagen, it's great for like anti-aging on your face, which is what everybody wants.
Exactly. Yes. Oh, I love bone broth so much. So many health benefits from broth. So, if you are doing like a gut healing protocol, I generally recommend 6 to 8 cups a day. Now, I know that sounds
Oh,
alarming, but if you use broth in your recipes, it's amazing how quickly you'll get to 8 cups a day. So, for instance, if I just make a very plain chicken broth without really anything in it goes in absolutely everything. So, I will cook my oatmeal in a little bit of chicken broth, sweeten it with some honey and some cinnamon, and you never know broth is in there. And then, I'll have, so there's, a cup already. And then I might have a cup in between breakfast and lunch just to sip on. You can add a little bit of honey to it and a little bit of squeeze of orange to kind of, vary up the flavor a little bit. And then let's say I've made one of those really big blended soups. So I love like carrot, ginger, butternut squash, and then a lot of bone broth, and kind of blend that all together. So maybe at lunch, I have another, I have a cup of that soup. So I'm getting a little bit of broth there. Let's say I cook my dinner in broth and I have another, I have a cup with my dinner, and sipping on a cup of bone broth with your meal also helps aid in digestion. It also helps boost your digestive enzymes. So that might also be helpful if you have like any sort of complications with digesting your foods. But, just in that short period of time, I've already consumed, 5 to 6 cups. And so if you're kind of sipping on it throughout the day, maybe you have a couple cups of soup, it's and incorporating it into different recipes. It's very, very easy to get more broth into your system. Now that's if you're really working to heal the gut. If you kind of just want to have it as like a general good housekeeping type of thing, I recommend, you can do a couple cups a week, or every other week or so, incorporating into your system. And sometimes I'll recommend, if you know that you're going to be really stressed out coming up, or your schedule is really busy, or you're doing a lot of traveling, make sure that broth is readily available. And that's a time to sort of increase your probiotics and make sure your broth is handy, your cooked foods, just really supporting the body in that way.
interesting. Okay. So somebody could do like a cup a day.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's kind of one of those things where if it's just as a housekeeping thing, you can go a week or two on, a week or two off. So, maybe one week you have a couple cups, then, you don't have to have any for a little bit, then start, make another batch and have some one week. So you can kind of go on and off of it. But if you are really working on like healing the gut, and you really are on a gut healing protocol, really making sure that you do 6 to 8 cups a day for, as long as you really need to start feeling better.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I always heard about, you would hear about some celebrities that were drinking this
Oh
to,
yeah.
for their collagen
Right.
in
Oh
their
yeah.
skin, and it would make you look younger. That's why I got interested in it. I was like, oh, another thing.
What's
Sweet.
your secret? Bone broth.
Right.
No, but it has so many health benefits. So it's great for healing the gut lining, because you're extracting all those nutrients, the collagen, the cartilage, those proteins that are helpful in repairing the lining. But also it's great for hydration. It supports a healthy metabolism in your detoxification pathways. It's amazing for just really everything, vitamins and minerals. There a lot of athletes will have it, as sort of like a recovery a recovery drink. I think it was it Tom Brady drinks bone broth, so it's got to be good if
Right, because he's
Tom
crazy
Brady drinks it, right?
So do you have any brands that you really like?
Let's see. So you'll definitely want to make sure that you buy it in the refrigerated or the freezer department of the grocery store, because the box kinds on the shelves, I'm not 100% sold on them. You really want to make sure that they gel, they're gelatinous if you're purchasing it from a store. Not always. That's not always the case. There are some in the refrigerated aisles that don't quite gel, but they're still a decent kind. But just like some of the box brands, they say they're bone broth, but then if you check on the ingredients, they're not really using bone. So you just have to kind of be on the lookout for that. But there's a company I really like, Bonafide Provisions, and I think they're found everywhere. Most health food stores have them, and I think they're sold in, I was told the other day someone found them at Walmart. So I don't know Walmart now, but I'm sure Costco. So just check your freezer department for their stuff. And I really like their brand. Let's see, Bare Bones Broth is another brand that I really like. So most broth, if you find it in the health food stores in the freezer department, is going to be pretty good. Just make sure to check the labels. There's one brand I love. It's a mother and daughter that started it, and they just have a really cool story. And it's Broth Masters, but you can only buy them online for now. But there are so many really great broth companies out there, and a lot of local companies too. So be sure to check that out at your local farmers markets, because the local companies are doing awesome things, and they're sourcing good quality bones, which is really important to a broth. So note that when you do make your own, make sure that you're getting free range chicken and grass-fed bones, because that has a huge impact on the quality and the health of the broth.
Interesting. And so when you say make sure it has like a gel type to it, how do you know that it has that?
So once it settles, it'll look a little bit like Jello. It'll shake a little bit. It'll be a little gelatinous, and then sometimes there'll be kind of like a thin lining of fat almost that kind of forms on the top. So some people will say, what do you do with the fat? You can scrape it off, you can throw it away. I recommend just keep it in there and mix it all together. But if your broth doesn't gel, it still is beneficial. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. A lot of times it affects the cooking technique. A lot of things can play into that. So it's not necessarily a bad thing if it doesn't gel, but that's one thing that I kind of look for, especially if I'm buying some from the store, that I just kind of want to make sure that way I know it's really getting those nutrients, that collagen and those nutrients that are helpful in repairing the lining.
Is this why you look so young?
Thank you. I think so. I swear by bone broth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if somebody's a vegetarian, how can they get the benefits of bone broth?
Yes, great question. So you can still get those nutrients by sourcing from vegetables that are high in nutrients that are like L-glutamine, essentially is a protein, an amino acid, the building block of protein that is helpful in repairing the gut lining. And that's one of the nutrients you're getting from bone broth. But you can find it in foods like beets, carrots, celery. Those are all high in L-glutamine. And I do have a vegetable broth recipe on my website. I put some seaweed in there, and then I used all the veggies that are really high in those nutrients that are helpful in repairing the gut lining. So you can still make a broth that's supportive of the gut, and a vegetarian version.
Okay, so that's good to know, because some people would be like, well, I can't do that because I'm a vegetarian. I'm not a vegetarian, but I'm just speaking for other people who might be.
Absolutely.
So how I think a lot of people, some people do this thing where they they have somebody do it, but they stick a hose up their butt, a colon cleanse?
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on that? Is that a good kind of kickstart?
So, there's a lot I can talk about with that. The diet that I went on was called the GAPS diet, gut and psychology syndrome. They talk a lot about enemas, and coffee enemas is another thing that they tout as being really helpful for the gut. I think if you have a severely compromised gut, again, it goes back to it being your thumbprint. Your situation is so unique. What your body needs. I am a fan of it in certain cases for certain individuals, and different, and depending on how compromised their gut is, can be really helpful. For instance, if you are, implementing some gut healing measures, and you're having severe detox symptoms, and the gut is so compromised, you can't necessarily get rid of some of these toxins, and they're just recirculating into your system. It can be very helpful to do some sort of colon cleanse or some sort of hydrotherapy or enema to help remove the toxins from the body. Now, with that being said, the downside of that is you are wiping out the good and the bad bacteria. So once you remove the toxins from the body, you really need to be sure that you get in there and start repopulating them with the beneficial ones, so the bad organisms don't take over. Because I have heard stories of people doing that, and they're like, oh, this was supposed to be really good for me, but then, I got really sick again. And that's because you didn't follow up immediately with repopulating the gut with that beneficial organisms. And so the pathogens just kind of took over. So there are good and bad things about it for sure. It just depends on where you're at and what's right for you.
Yeah, because there were, I've done a few of them before, but they're saying that sometimes people, like, men that are overweight, or just people, can have like up to 20 pounds of just old waste living in their intestines.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
how do you get that out? Is it going in there with like a basically a fire hose and
It's so with hydrotherapy, it's basically kind of something similar. They just pump water into the large intestine and kind of clean out the microbiome essentially, and clean out some of the old fecal matter. Some people really recommend it as like a cleanse every spring or every fall. It just really depends. I think in certain individuals, it can be really helpful and really effective. And then enemas, you can do them at home as well, and that can be effective too. You can also do those with probiotics, with certain things, so that you not only are cleaning out, but you are repopulating at the same time.
So let's talk about enemas, because you see them on the drugstore shelf. I mean, do you really just like throw your legs over your head and
I'm not an expert on enemas. I can't say that I've done one, or but I don't know. I'm not an expert, but I think they come with directions.
Yeah, right. So, and then you said coffee enema.
Yes.
What is that? Why is that better or worse than the water one?
Again, it really just depends. So with the coffee, it has been known to kind of stimulate the system and can help have a little bit more of a detoxing effect. And again, you can do this with probiotics too, so that at the same time when you're cleaning out, you're also repopulating. So there are some different things. I would definitely, if this is something that someone's really looking into, I would do a little bit more research, and even maybe talk with somebody that's an expert in hydrotherapy to figure out what is the best for you. Because again, you really sometimes it's best to do it in a series of like 3 or whatever they'd recommend, so that you're really cleaning out and then repopulating. So because you don't want to get everything out and then have the pathogens overgrow. And then if you do it too much, you can affect the natural bowel movements, and then start to rely on that as a way of removing the toxins from the body. So you don't want to kind of mess up your body's own natural abilities to detoxify.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, you would have to do your research, because I don't think they want you to like pour your leftover Folgers from the pot up your ass.
Right.
Like that would be,
Exactly. Well, one thing people are doing though too is the fecal transplants, FMT. Yes. So basically, you take a healthy fecal sample and basically, put it inject it, I guess, into the colon of someone that's particularly more unhealthy in order to get those healthy organisms in the gut. Now, this has been a really
Whoa.
helpful and therapeutic approach for people with like Crohn's and IBS. Although I did recently read that it's kind of this new like health and beauty movement. So it's like a way of restoring youth that
What?
older people are using the fecal matter from younger people and implementing that as sort of a way to kind of like, anti-aging technique. So I guess could be like a new beauty trend. I don't know. I don't necessarily know if I would recommend that. I mean, I would just rather eat well, but it is
Yeah.
really interesting what people are and what we're finding with the microbiome and what it's tied to, aging,
Wow.
obesity, and all these diseases. So yeah, it's interesting times for sure.
So if you want a fecal transplant, who's providing the source? Like who's shitting out the medicine, so to say, right? Like who are these people, and how do I know they weren't at the bar the night before?
Yeah, it's you want to do your homework on that. Make sure you get the right fecal donor. I would imagine, but it's
Wow.
a medical procedure, and yeah. So, and if done properly, as a therapeutic approach, again, it's really helpful for people that are really struggling with really debilitating diseases and like Crohn's and irritable bowel, and it's a way of sort of repopulating that gut with beneficial organisms. So it can be helpful for those. As far as anti-aging and all the other interesting ways that it's being used now, I can't speak to that, but it's interesting for sure.
I mean, that is just so interesting. It's like, what do? You go to a center and you get your Botox and healthier shit put inside of you. Do they just shove it in you, like up your
I
butt?
don't know exactly. I mean, it is implemented, I believe, in the colon. As far as how the procedure goes, I'm
Wow.
not really quite certain, but yeah.
Oh my gosh. So tell us about like more about your company, Fairy Gutmother, because you are not only like a nutritionist, but you have a bunch of recipes and, people can go there to kind of get started. So let's hear about that.
Sure. Yeah. So with Fairy Gutmother, I do a lot of different things. So it's recipe development, recipes that all help to support optimal gut health, and do a lot with bone broth, fermented foods, high fiber rich diet. So I have Fairy Gutmother and cooking demos, and then I do a lot of writing, health and wellness articles in different magazines and online publications. Most recently, I've been talking a lot about the gut health lifestyle. So gut health is not just a diet, because stress is just as damaging on the gut as junk food. So I talk a lot about, meditation, yoga. Yeah. And so really making sure that you're taking care of yourself, because that's a huge part of gut health. You can eat, and I see this a lot of times. I'll analyze my clients' microbiome. So they'll send in a sample and I get a snapshot of what all is going on in their gut back. And they're like, I have all these gut problems, but I eat so well. I don't know how this can happen. And I look at the gut report, and they have an overgrowth of proteobacteria, which is inflammation essentially. And that to me is kind of like my lifestyle indicator. And so I'll talk to them a little bit more about their lifestyle, and if they have a very stressful life and don't have a lot of time for self-care, but yet their diet is really great. So moral of the story, gut health is a lifestyle. It's not just a diet. So yeah, definitely different writing things, talks, workshops, recipes, any way to help kind of spread the gut health message is basically what I do.
Yeah. And can you share, is there a story or a client that comes to mind that you can kind of share their journey about how you were able to heal them?
You know, really, everyone sort of has a similar journey in the sense that it's been a little bit of diet and a little bit of lifestyle, and it's all kind of the stuff that I've recommended. We've just worked on incorporating more easier to digest foods that help support the gut, and slowly, worked through the journey together, and then talking about the lifestyle, stress management, getting into like yoga or something that really feels right for them. It's an education process, learning about foods to incorporate and foods to avoid. And I've worked with people with all sorts of issues, skin issues, eczema, to autoimmune conditions, obesity, all sorts of different issues for different people. But really, it's been amazing to see just what happens and what heals on focusing the gut. And I think that's so promising and motivating and rewarding, for me, just to be able to see making just these small changes, what a big impact it really has on people's lives.
Yeah, because so many people think if they're sick, they're going to go to the doctor and they're going to then they just get a pill, and that's not
Right.
good. You're naturally healing people.
Absolutely.
Which is amazing. So I didn't realize though that stress, because people are especially now, people are very stressed. Like
Yes.
really can wreak havoc on your gut.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people probably don't know that. So if you're very stressed because of everything going on, or you just have anxiety, what are things you can do besides yoga and meditation? Because we've all heard about those.
Right, exactly. And it's not, like yoga and meditation aren't necessarily the cure all. I just kind of say, let's find what works best for you. And for, one of my clients, it was riding his bike, and getting out and really taking time to ride his bike in nature. And that was sort of his thing. So, it's figuring out what works best for you and your schedule. What are your passions? What are things that kind of get you out of your head and into your body? And that's really what we're looking for. I love Epsom salt baths. It's great for so many different things. You're absorbing all of those minerals from the Epsom salt into your body. So it's great for hydration, sore muscles, all sorts of things. But, it's also really calming and detoxifying for the body as well. So, that journaling, there's so many different things that we can practice for self-care. And really at the end of the day, it's just what works best for you, what gets you out of your head, what gets you into your body. And cooking good quality foods is an act of self-care. Just trying to find what works best for you, but definitely the stress management piece. I mean, I think this is why we find ourselves in this, part of the reason in the global health crisis is that we're really hanging on by our shoestrings when it comes to our immune systems. I mean, we are really stimulated and totally stressed out. And we combine this with these really bad diets, and poor habits. And, this is where our immune system is. And so it makes it really important to make sure that you're getting in that balance of both of those.
So if somebody is really kind of stressed or has anxiety, and they can do these different things to help reduce it, but should they be taking a higher dose of probiotics?
Yes. So, well, yes and no. So again, it kind of goes back to you. I don't want to say, yes, take more probiotics, and then someone takes a bunch of probiotics and it's like, oh, I just, spent the whole day in the bathroom. So, cause that can absolutely happen. So, you want to introduce slowly, but absolutely, when you are stressed out, when you can tell your immune system is a little weak, if you're traveling, lack of sleep, these are times to really work on making sure that you're incorporating really quality foods and get the probiotics into your system so you can maintain that healthy and strong immune.
Yeah, because it's just so interesting. I just never would have thought that like stress plays a part in like your gut. And that so many of our sicknesses actually start in the gut. And so especially now, like, and like with everything going on with, people being scared of COVID, not knowing what to believe and not knowing if they're gonna be compromised by it. A lot of people have no symptoms. Some people do. Maybe now is the time to get your gut healthy. How many times should somebody shit a day or have a bowel movement?
So I would say, I mean, you definitely want to have at least one bowel movement a day. And this is, no one wants to talk about this topic, but it is important, because I have clients that are like, oh yeah, I'm very regular. And I'm like, well, can you, elaborate? It's like, oh, one every 4 days. And I'm like, that is not normal. But people have a sense of normal for them. Like once every 4 days is really normal for them. So they think that's normal. And then, then you kind of have your own sense of normal. So it's important to talk about it. You absolutely want to have at least one bowel movement a day. I would probably say no more than 3. You don't want to be going to the bathroom every time after you eat. You also don't want to be alternating from constipation, diarrhea. Just having more, regular, consistent bowel movements is what you want to look for.
Okay. And so more than 3 a day should be alarming.
Well, and it really kind of depends on the person, but yeah, I think when you're going over 3, that's like you're making frequent trips to the bathroom, and you're going after every meal, and that's not always healthy.
Right, because your food has to take a while to process.
Right. And so then you're not properly absorbing your nutrients. That's probably an indication that there's, some sort of leaky gut. So again, with when there's problems with the gut lining, you absorb all the nutrients with your gut lining. And so if that could be an indication of some sort of leaky gut, definitely an indication of some sort of pathogen or dysbiosis in the gut. I would say, you want at least a bowel movement every day, but, not very frequent, no more than 3. Otherwise, that's also probably some sort of indication of a compromised gut.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, this has been amazing. So, real quick though, because I know I'm thinking it and everyone's going to watch this and think the same thing. What are you using on your skin? Because it looks fabulous.
Oh, thank you. Honestly, I don't have any crazy secrets about what I put on my skin. I don't do anything fancy. I don't do anything cool. I have a bar of soap, honestly, and sometimes I'll put like coconut oil on my face, and but I think so much of it has to do with inside your body. I drink a lot of bone broth. I incorporate ferments. I eat really clean. I drink a lot of water. So you want to aim to drink half your body weight in water every day. So making sure that you're doing that. And
wait, half your body weight
in water, the amount in ounces. So
okay, I was like, wait.
Yeah, I should have said ounces. I don't know. I probably missed an important part. So so half your body weight in ounces for water a day. Yeah. So making sure you're hydrated, that's a huge thing for skin health. And I wish I had a cool, something that I use, but it's really quite boring. And I think it really honestly is attributed to diet and lifestyle.
No, and I think you summed it up perfectly there. I think people can look at you and just have proof. Well, there's a lot of creams that you can buy and overpay, but the truth of the matter is, I mean, there's proof right there. Is it really starts on the inside?
It does. Absolutely. Yeah. And then the cool thing is that, there are several microbiomes in the body. There's a microbiome in your mouth. There's a microbiome in your lungs. There's a microbiome in your gut and the vagina and on your skin. So if you have skin issues, it can very well be just topically, the microbiome of the skin, but usually underlying it's the gut. The gut is the mother of all microbiomes. And so if you're having issues in other places, you want to address the gut first and then see, because generally that'll kind of clear up in the other areas.
This has been fascinating and so educational. I want to run to Whole Foods and buy a bunch of new stuff, So where can people find you?
So on my website, it's just fairygutmother.com, and on social media at Fairy Gutmother, Instagram, Facebook, and I have some cooking demos on my YouTube page. So so I post all my information there, good recipes, and if I publish articles, I always share those as well.
This has been fabulous. Carley, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and just educating us and helping us live a healthier, better lifestyle, which is so important. And you guys at home or listening in the car, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Next to Madison. And we'll see you guys next time to find out who's next. find out who's next.
Hi, your host, Madison Malloy here. I just wanted to remind you guys to please follow the show on social media at Next to Madison. And if you have any questions or suggestions for the show, or you feel that you would be a great guest on the show and would love to be considered, please feel free to email me at nexttomadison@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms. And I thank you again for listening.